Hey, this is Brooke, functional medicine dietitian specializing in fertility, and this is the Fertility Dietitian podcast, where I help you uncover the barriers that are preventing you from optimizing your fertility and teach you how to work with your body to finally take home a healthy baby. Each week, I will be diving into different topics on fertility and sharing my perspective on physiology, metabolic health, nutrition, and lifestyle approaches that have helped hundreds of couples get pregnant even after years of heartache. My goal is to empower you with the knowledge you need to take back control of your fertility. Happy listening. Today, I'm talking with one of my past clients, Peggy. Peggy and her husband were trying to conceive for 3 years prior to reaching out and investing in the Master Your Fertility program. She did discover that she had a mild case of endometriosis through a laparoscopy, and she learned that she had LUFS, or Luteinized Unruptured Follicle Syndrome. She learned about the endo and the LUFS in her first year of trying to conceive. She tried a handful of medications, which only worked about 50% of the time, and the medications were meant to help her follicles rupture. And if you're unfamiliar with what LUFS is, tune into my next episode because we'll be talking much more detail about what LUFS is. But that medication was working only about 50% of the time for her to help her follicles rupture. And by the time that they'd reached out to me, she'd gone through 6 straight months of LUFS cycles. So super frustrated. But with our work together, she started ovulating on her own and got pregnant the second cycle she ovulated. So keep listening to learn more about her story. Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for joining me here today to chat about your experience of working together.
Hey Brooke, I'm so excited. You really made a difference in my journey altogether, and I'm excited to get to speak about it today.
Yay. Let's start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name is Peggy, and I went through infertility for about 3.5 years. I'm in architecture in the South, and I don't know what else to say. Do you want me to go through the journey, or are we gonna talk
That's
about that a little more?
perfect. No, that's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah. And please do share a little bit about what your journey looked like before we met.
Before we met, so we met about almost exactly into year 3 of the journey. So 3 years before that, we tried for about probably 8 months before I was like, maybe there's a problem here. I knew, I'm Catholic, so I knew a little bit about NFP, and I knew about things like cervical mucus and things of that nature. And so I never was able really to do the Creighton method, which involves cervical mucus, because I never had an indication that ovulation was near. So I just kind of went to the Marquette method, which is LH strips, and figuring that out. But so that was one of my first concerns, that I went to a doctor in Texas, because I lived in Houston at the time, and she was wonderful. And I was like, look, I don't have much cervical mucus. I don't know what's going on. So we kind of went through a month of charting, and then she did some blood work, and we noticed that my progesterone had been low on peak +7. So like after I had supposedly ovulated, my progesterone was low. So she was like, let's give you some ovulation meds to kind of boost that, to see if it would boost your ovulation. And what we saw from that was that my ovulation, in my opinion, just started to like not perform at all. Like, I think my initial blood work was better than when I started taking the meds. So about a year, maybe it was like 10 months into that, we went ahead and did a diagnostic laparoscopy, because my periods had always been kind of like painful, just on the first day or two. But I always thought that if you only needed Advil and it wasn't debilitating, that it was normal. So we went ahead and did a laparoscopy, and I did have stage 1 endometriosis. On my bowels, on my ovaries. I had a cyst on my tubes. So she removed all that, and I'm so grateful for her. But from that surgery on, she discovered that I was suffering with something called Luteinized Unruptured Follicle Syndrome, where I had all the biomarkers of ovulation, but I was not actually ovulating. So I would have an LH surge, I would have progesterone rise, but my progesterone rise would never be very good. But what was happening was the egg was getting stuck inside of that follicle and just turning into a cyst. So I never really had chances of ovulation. We tried several different medications. Most of them, it was 50-50, so you really didn't know if that was just your body doing it or if it was the medication doing it. And so by the time that I had signed up with you, I think I went through almost 6 months of straight unruptured follicles, so no chance at all. And that's kind of where we ended up when we started working together. I was just really frustrated by all the, I guess I should back up and say, with this syndrome, you can only tell that you ovulated through ultrasound series. And I was very frustrated going to these ultrasound series, being in a room mostly with people who are pregnant, and you're just trying to see if you ovulated or not. And then coming out of that room and just finding out that you just had like a 5 centimeter cyst on your ovaries, and other people are just happy and holding their ultrasounds in their hands, and you're just finding out that you actually had no chance that month to even get pregnant. So I
That's
guess that
so
kind of sums it up.
yes, that's extremely frustrating. And you just were not really getting any answers or any additional support other than like, keep trying, we'll keep trying this medication or that medication.
Correct. And it's like a pretty frustrating problem because it's so dependent on each person, and it could be endometriosis is causing it. It could be uh, just a whole different myriad of reasons. And so it's so particular to the particular person. So my doctor was doing her best, and I love her so much, but she just wasn't, we just kind of reached a point in the road where we just didn't know what to do next.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So, how did you end up finding me or deciding that you wanted to pursue the Master Your Fertility program?
Um, I think it was like 2 Decembers ago, one of my friends had posted something on Instagram that they had gone through 6 years of infertility, and I think they went through like 2 laparoscopies and all kinds of things, and they had no idea why they were getting pregnant. I think they had one chemical pregnancy, and so finally they were like, okay, the last thing we're gonna do now, this is our last hoorah, just to see, before they pursued adoption, was hiring a dietitian and figuring out kind of what maybe someone could help them. And it was you, and they were announcing their pregnancy, and they kind of laid out their whole journey and said, okay, we're pregnant, and we went through 6 years. After 2 months we're pregnant. And I know that's like, it usually takes a lot more time, but it was great. And I reached out to them, and they gave me your name, and then we kind of connected. And my husband and I just felt like there was really nothing left for us to try, which really now I'm like, this should have been the first the first line of defense. But yeah, that's how I found out about you.
Awesome. Yeah. His majority of my clients definitely find me on Instagram in one way or another, but that's awesome that it was from somebody that you knew that was posting that story. That's really awesome. And definitely similar feelings around wishing that they would have gone a similar route much earlier. But we do the best we can with the knowledge that we have, and the support that is out there is awesome and helpful too in the medical world, and they can work really well together, which you ended up finding as well. So once we did start working together, what would you say are the biggest changes that you and your husband ended up making?
I never realized that I was just not eating enough. I was always thinner. I'm not extremely thin. Like my doctor, there was a point after my surgery that I was kind of losing weight, but she's like, okay, as long as you don't get below this certain BMI point, you're okay. Like I'm not worried about your weight of why you're not ovulating. But once once like you kind of laid out a plan for me and I was trying to reach my protein goals, I realized like how stressed out my body must have been. Um And I think the biggest surprise to me and the biggest change was just eating simply enough. And that's what I always try to like tell people when like a lot of my friends who are struggling with infertility, they're like, "Well, what did you even change? I already eat healthy." I'm like, "Yeah, you might eat healthy, but I don't think you realize how much you're supposed to be eating." And I think that was like cuz I really wouldn't eat breakfast. I would always have coffee first. I never if I snacked, it was just stressful snacks in the day. So, and then I would run. So really my only big meal was a dinner. And no one ever really raised the red flag for me because I was thin, but I wasn't too thin. And so that I feel like was the biggest change. We found out through a lot of for one of the analysis that you did that I had gluten sensitivity, so I cut out gluten. And my husband just did a really good job. He's great. He's the cook of the family, so he just did a really good job at making sure that we're eating our snacks and we're getting in what we needed each day. So I would say that less processed foods, but also eating enough in general. Like I didn't stress too much about if I had something quote unquote bad. I would always just make sure I had a balance in general.
Definitely, yeah. And that's so true for so many of the women that I work with and men too, that they're just not eating enough. And those protein goals make such a huge difference in the nutrients that are coming into your body. And you mentioned that we saw that you were pretty depleted in some of your analyses. So the hair tissue mineral analysis that we did um, with for you was definitely showing that we needed a lot more nutrients on board to help your body feel safe enough to work on maturing those good quality follicles so that when ovulation did happen, that it would hopefully greatly increase your chances of conception. Um, do you feel like, I guess, what what are your feelings on how working with me was different than working with your other providers?
Um, I feel like there were some things that just were never checked with my providers, and even if I mean they were really great in their own sense. Like I would have never even found out I wasn't ovulating if not for them. But I feel like there's a lot of blood work that was not checked. I was told just to go, like my DEHA was extremely high. So I think we found out it was my DHEAS was high with you, but then my doctor ended up running another test, and my DHEA was out of the roof, like tumor levels. And I know I don't have a tumor because it ended up coming back down, which means like I was stressed out. That in itself could have prevented ovulation from happening. Um, I was always told to go blanket statement, go on a Mediterranean diet, which was very hard for me because I just didn't have any guidance in what to do. I was told cut out dairy completely, which was it was easier for me to cut out gluten completely because there was evidence that it actually was affecting me. And when I cut that out, we might get to that later, but when I cut that out, personally for me, I felt a huge difference. Like my skin cleared up and I wasn't as fatigued. So there was obvious that that was having an impact on me, but cutting out dairy was hard because it was just like, why am I doing this? Is it really affecting anything? So I think I had a lot harder of a time of just blanket, maybe this will work. Whereas like when I worked with you, there was more evidence-based treatment and it wasn't like cut out dairy just to cut out dairy because it might be inflammatory or like it was cut out gluten because we know it's inflammatory because we looked at your gut health, or do this because we know that this affects um, these certain blood sugar levels or whatever it may be. If there was more guidance on particular things that I had to do, whereas my doctor and I, like, I don't mean to push on her or anything because she was never trained in it. It was more of like, oh, I saw this help someone, maybe it'll help you, which is an entirely different approach.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, no shade on any medical providers by any means. Like what they do is so important, but their training is very different, like you said. And it's not their fault that they don't have the knowledge in it, but working with somebody who does can really make a big difference in being able to individualize that diet. And like you mentioned, we did find in your gut that there was inflammation and even immune system kind of dysregulation due to the gluten for you. And that's not true for everybody. Even if you do have LUFS or luteinized unruptured follicle syndrome, you might not have to cut out gluten. And cutting out major food groups like dairy or gluten grains can actually deplete you further if you're not working with somebody that can help you kind of fill in those nutrient gaps of taking those food groups out. Because really the overarching goal is to help your body feel safe. So if we're continually eliminating things, it's often not gonna result in the long-term outcome that you want. You might see some initial changes that are positive, but long term, like we're looking not only to help you get pregnant, but nourish that healthy pregnancy, be able to recover postpartum, and that it really makes a big difference as to how repleted or safe your body feels going into pregnancy. So awesome to hear that you felt like you were supported and getting that individualized support that was evidence based. That is definitely my goal.
I
Um,
also feel like, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
One thing that I found pretty surprising was I don't think my doctor was wrong. Like, I don't think that my BMI was that low, but I think that when I ate more and I was eating like a lot more, but it was more of substantial things and more things that were good and fertility friendly and just nourishing, I guess is the word. I didn't really gain that much weight when I finally got pregnant. I maybe gained 1 to 2 pounds, but it really wasn't something that, um, and that might have just been like the day that I got on the scale. Like, so it just, I was eating more, but I wasn't really gaining more, but my body was feeling safe. Like, okay, she's giving me the nutrients to go ahead and be successful in what we're trying to do.
That is a really good point. Like eating a lot more does not always mean that the scale's going way up. Your body can definitely adapt, and everybody's everybody's body adapts a little different. Like sometimes there's a little bit more weight gain at first, but then you'll see like your body kind of find a happy place, and our bodies
Yes.
only really gain weight if they feel like they need to. It's really those nutrients that you're craving, and if you're giving it consistency, it will use them how you want them to be used. And in these scenarios, we're channeling them to fertility.
Right.
Yeah. What kind of changes do you feel like you saw? Um, just during the program while we were working together, whether it's in your cycle or your energy, sleep.
Um, I always credited this to cutting out gluten, but it was probably just the amount that I was eating and what I was eating in general. But I used to have to take like 4 hour naps every single weekend, and I would just be drained. And I don't think, except like first trimester of pregnancy, I don't think I've really taken a nap in a long, or felt like I needed to take a nap in a really long time. So my energy levels were up, my skin completely cleared up. Like, it's not that I had really bad acne or anything, but I would always, if there would be flare-ups, and that cleared up. My first period, I was shocked at how cramps are supposed to feel during a period. Like they're not supposed to be painful. And I kind of felt that the month after my laparoscopy, but it quickly came back. So this time, catering my diet, I did not have painful periods. I didn't even have to take Advil, and it only kept getting better every month from then. And honestly, that's the thing that kind of made me keep going, because it still took months for my body to adapt to everything. I was like, well, it's obviously doing something because it is affecting the um, yeah, cyclic, whatever, the cycle. It is affecting it positively. I also did not have clots in my period anymore, which no one ever told me that wasn't normal. I think even after my laparoscopy, I still had clots in my period, and I didn't have clots at all. Um, Once I started, I might maybe like the first cycle, maybe a little, but it just completely started being a normal flow pretty much throughout the whole program.
That's
And
awesome.
those were the major changes that kind of, it kept me going, because I was seeing results, even if it wasn't um, affecting I wasn't getting there as quickly as you'd want to, because you want to get there like the next week, but it kept me going.
Definitely. Yeah. Those are such positive changes. I mean, the energy piece for sure, but the period changes with decreasing pain and not seeing those clots are huge, huge signs that just that uterine environment is in a more improved place. Like it's going to be more inviting for pregnancy to occur and be successful. So that's really cool to hear. And the skin changes. I mean, that's definitely something that's fairly common among women if they are dealing with acne. We end up seeing, and that's a lot of times, well, it's a combination of things, but the gut piece is a really big part for that. So you're digesting and absorbing your nutrients better, inflammation's decreasing, just your detox pathways are working better, which is all awesome. What did you end up seeing throughout our months together as far as your ruptured follicles went?
So I think we might have started, we got the test results back in last June.
Mhm.
So know I didn't ovulate in June. I did not ovulate in July. I did not ovulate in August. I did not ovulate in September. And then October, my doctor was like, well, why don't we throw in some medicines like letrozole or something. I think it was tamoxifen that I took, just to see if that'll give you a boost again. And my body hated that. It turned into a huge, like, hemorrhagic cyst. It really hurt. I didn't ovulate that cycle. And so I think at that point I was like, oh, is it making a difference? But then since that cyst was hanging around from October to November, um, my doctor wouldn't give me any more medications. And I wasn't really convinced by ovulatory medications anymore, just because my body didn't react well to it. And so the end of November, I went to go see her, and I was just like, I don't think I ovulated. And we went and we checked, and I ovulated without medications naturally. Um, After like 10 months of not ovulating, I finally ovulated on my own. No medications, nothing. I remember crying, and I was so, like, because it was just such a hard year. And my progesterone was pretty, it was okay at that point. It wasn't ideal, but it was definitely, you could tell that it was getting better. And then that next month, I did, like, full disclosure, I did end up taking medicine. I'm not sure if that was the difference, because the way that I was tracking my basal body temperature, um, I took a trigger shot after my temperature had dipped. So I think that the day that I dipped, I probably already ovulated. But we took it anyway because we took it a little. And historically for me, trigger shots don't work. Um, so I don't know if that was the case at all, but I did take it. Since I had ovulated the month before without medication, I'm thinking that the next month I probably didn't need medication. And I always, like from the beginning, I was telling my husband, like, if I can just get myself to ovulate, then I think, and I make all these positive changes, I think I could get pregnant like within the first 3 months of ovulating. And so then the second month I ovulated of in 2023 is when I got pregnant. Because
Yes.
even before, I like, it wasn't like I was never ovulating. I was probably ovulating 50% of the time. I still wasn't getting pregnant.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yes, once your body was ready to start ovulating, it did not take long at all for that positive pregnancy. And I remember you were testing your progesterone because you had taken that trigger shot and it was getting really high, right?
Yeah. It was like, yeah, it was insanely high and it was doing really, really well.
Yeah. Which made you take that pregnancy test, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I took the trigger. It was a normally a doctor will give you an HCG trigger, but my doctor gave me a Lupron trigger because I wasn't respond. The only trigger that had ever worked was a Lupron trigger, even though it didn't work consistently. So we took that, and that trigger makes your progesterone estrogen just plummet. So she was just monitoring the situation after I had ovulated, um, and my progesterone was just doing super, super well after. And so I think it was like 50 or something. And I was taking progesterone supplements, but it never ever made it that high. And it was 50. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a test. And it was pretty early and there was a clear positive.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely your body doing a lot of that, which is awesome. So what do you, I guess, so we started working together in June of 2023. You had that first ovulation on your own. Was it like early November time?
Yes, yes,
About
early November.
5-ish months later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then you had that positive pregnancy test in December. So the next cycle that you ovulated, potentially with some support of the trigger shot, but definitely the quality of those follicles that were ovulating, I think were changed with all of the work that you put in with the eating more and those signs along the way in your cycle were definitely showing that hormones were shifting, your body was feeling safer, definitely increasing those chances of conception of your baby boy, which is so
Yeah.
exciting.
I remember getting the scan last December for like that follicular series to see to follow a follicle before and after ovulation, and it was a perfect round circle. And I don't think it had ever been perfectly round before. And I remember asking you, does that mean like better egg quality? And you were like, that could be a sign. I was like, that'd be so cool if this it was perfectly round. I was like, if this egg was the one that gets fertilized to be my son, and it was.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool that you were able to see that.
Hmm.
Awesome. Well, how old is your little one now?
He is 3.5 months.
Oh, so
Yeah,
sweet.
he is so sweet.
And how was your pregnancy with him?
It was perfect. There was I will say there was a time at week 6 because we were following my progesterone to make sure it was going up. It did plummet. And we aren't sure why, but my doctor because I had my fertility doctor in Houston, and then I had my other doctor in Louisiana because we had moved back. So my OB, um, I ended up like my fertility doctor put me on progesterone, and then the next week I had an ultrasound, and there was it didn't look like there was a risk of miscarriage. So my OB in Baton Rouge thought, I think that was just a fluke because my progesterone from that point, like I was on supplements just to make myself feel better, but there was never I had to fast before those supplements to make sure to see what my body was naturally producing, and it was always at an ideal level. So I took a little just to make myself feel better, and I think I quit like second trimester. It was doing My doctor was like, it's doing really well. I would just get off it altogether. So it went pretty good. I mean, pretty well. And then the first trimester, I really didn't have that much nausea. Maybe some bits of it, but I wasn't throwing up or anything. And he just did really well all the way until birth. Um, and he was doing great. And so I had I would say a pretty easy going pregnancy.
That's awesome. And how have things been postpartum with healing?
It's been actually pretty like easy on me as well. I feel like I ate pretty well throughout pregnancy. A lot of those key ideas or key goals that I was given before fertility, I remember to keep it throughout pregnancy, just because I wanted him to be nourished well and make sure that since I have a tendency to skip meals or do things, I made sure that I wasn't doing that. And I feel like I was fueling myself for after pregnancy, and postpartum's been pretty easy for me. I know it's not always the case, and I could be lucky there as well, but it's been good, and he's healthy as can be, so we're all doing well.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear. Like there's definitely a wide range of experiences during pregnancy and postpartum time, but it certainly doesn't hurt to have the preparation that you had going into it. Just for, I mean, we know that going into pregnancy in a nourished state where we're not depleted in nutrients and our body's feeling really good and safe, definitely sets us up for better outcomes, even through postpartum, especially since you mentioned that you were aiming to keep some of the eating patterns and goals consistent through pregnancy. That can definitely make a big difference. That's awesome to hear that you've been feeling really good with all of it. Would you have any advice for any other women that are maybe in a similar place that you were before we started working together?
Yes, one of the main things that I always told myself of why it couldn't be nutrition is, oh, so and so got pregnant and they're not very healthy, so therefore it's not my nutrition that's affecting me. And I would do that all the time. I put it off for so long, but the reality is that their their body might be manifesting it in way different ways than your body is. And your body, like, they're still being affected by those choices. Your body just decided, you know what, like, we don't want to bring another life into this until we have you figured out, which is actually almost like it is a positive thing. It's just that your deficiencies, your nutrition is lack of nutrition is manifesting itself in infertility, which sucks, and we're the unfortunate ones that happens to. But just because someone else isn't experiencing that doesn't mean that it's not the problem for you. I also, so that was my key. I think like everything that came together, nutrition was the last key that I needed to be able to be successful in a pregnancy, but it also made me feel like it made me feel a lot better in pregnancy that I did the best that I could to make this successful. And it doesn't always mean that it's going to be successful or anything's your fault. It just gave me a little peace of mind after going through 3.5 years of this, like, okay, we're here. I did the best I could. Whatever happens, happens, but I know that I put my best foot forward. I would have rather I'm happy I went through this journey because I have like so many I've changed for the good for a lot of things. I've learned a lot. I wouldn't ever do it again. And I believe that this baby was meant to exist in this moment in time, and I'm really grateful for him. But I do wish that maybe it would have been my first line of defense, because I don't think I would have gone through 3.5 years of pain. Um, I actually cried this morning about how grateful I was for him and for everyone that helped me get here. My doctors, you, and yeah, that I just like not everyone has that support. I was lucky to even like fall into my doctor's lap. Like someone just told me her name and I went. And she found out things that most doctors don't even check for. So I would be persistent. I'd do your own research. I would put nutrition as the first line of defense. I'd also be skeptical of things that the medical world might say that's normal, because it might not be normal. And a lot of doctors, OBs, have no clue about even a woman's cycle, which is I think is wild. Like my doctor had a lot of knowledge of that, but she was like, we didn't really get trained for that even in med school, which I think is crazy. So yeah, be your own advocate. Nutrition should be first line of defense, or at least working together with whatever medicine has to offer you. And yeah, sorry, I just went on a little ramble
Mm,
there, but
no, that's wonderful. I think all of that's really, really helpful. And I would 1000% agree with you. Like, it doesn't have to be either or, but including nutrition as part of, or somebody that is well versed in fertility, nutrition, especially, and just women's health as a whole with the natural approach can be life changing. I mean, you heard Peggy talk about the changes that she saw during the program that kind of kept her going. Um, Obviously, the couples that I work with, like their ultimate goal is that healthy baby, but you are investing in your long term health. As well as your baby's long term health, making these changes. And it doesn't mean that you can't also utilize medical support and what they have to offer too, because it definitely can work really well together in tandem. Um,
and one other piece of advice too that I tell people when they ask about my experience is, um, they're like, oh, I did this diet, I've tried all these diets, and I feel like don't think of this as a diet, like with quotes, like you're cutting things or you're eating salads all the time or you're doing anything like that. This, if anything, this was more additive than it was reductive. Like I still had my iced vanilla latte that I loved almost every single day. I just made sure to balance it with a protein. And so I don't think it means that you have to take away everything you love. And that certainly wasn't my experience. And I think that's something that I had um misconceptions about, and I think it's something that a lot of people have misconceptions about.
Definitely. That's a really good point. When you're working with me, we are definitely not restrictive. That is
No.
not my philosophy at all. The more we can add, the safer your body feels. And yeah, we might tweak things a little bit, but the goal is that you're still going to love food and get to consume things that you love in a balanced way. And hopefully, you're leaving with strategies that you can I mean, my goal is always to make the strategies very realistic and sustainable because ideally you're learning to work with your body to support this healthy baby. And if you wish to try for another healthy baby, then you still have those tools to continue on. And I think learning to work with your individual body is a key point there. As Peggy mentioned, like it's not a diet, it's not like a blanket generalized um, rule book that we're following. Like, we're doing the testing, we're seeing where your body's at, what it needs, so we can individualize the approach for you. And that's going to be definitely the most sustainable way moving forward to help you reach your goals. So thank you so very much for sharing your story, Peggy. I know so many are going to love hearing your experience working together, and congratulations again on your beautiful baby boy. I'm so excited that you get to experience Christmas together as a family of 3 this year. And any last words for other women or couples if they are on the fence of maybe investing in their health and for a more natural approach for fertility?
I would say it's worth the money, and it's worth the investment. My husband and I, like, when we were discussing it, we're like, best case scenario, we end up with a baby, which we did. And I really know so well how painful that is, like, to be going month through month of no hope. But this, I feel like, garners new hope because you're trying something that you've never really tried before. Um, and I also think that worst case scenario, so that's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, you get healthier and you learn more about yourself, and maybe some of those symptoms that um, you've never really realized where they stemmed from, you find out and you feel better. So it's it's never bad to invest in yourself and your health, because even in the long term, it's going to pay off. Maybe it might not be what you want, which my experience, I got what I wanted. My friends' experiences, they did, but in general, it's not going to hurt you. It's only going to help anything. Even if you have to go through some other treatments later, it's only going to help those treatments. So I would say 100% worth the money.
Awesome. I love hearing that. There's definitely not a negative outcome, even though you might not get your ultimate outcome. But yes, and using reproductive technology either in tandem or after is also obviously a possibility. But this type of approach is definitely going to greatly improve your outcomes if you do end up going that route too.
My doctor even mentioned when we were, like, the last 2 months of last month, she's like, well, why don't we try this? Because you've made all these positive changes. You've seen positive changes. It might have opened new pathways for the medication to work better. So that was something. She was very respectful of what was happening, and she knew that I was trying really hard, and we were working towards that. But she was like, since you've made these changes, it could be beneficial with these medications now. So she was even on board about, like, yeah, this could greatly affect your outcome in a lot of situations. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Peggy, for being here and sharing your story. And I wish you a wonderful holiday season.
thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fertility Dietitian podcast. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review to let me know what topics you want more of or less of. If you want to keep learning, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out my website for more info on my private coaching program, Master Your Fertility, or my membership community, Fertility Blueprint. And don't forget my digital store. Come say hi on YouTube and Instagram. See you in the next episode.